Max has been afraid of clowns since childhood. He didn't know why, but their makeup, unnatural smiles, and wide eyes caused him goosebumps. Fear is a thing of the past, or so it seemed. There was an old wardrobe in the room, which was inherited from the previous owner. Sometimes the door opened on its own. John thought it was a draft, but every time it happened, he felt strangely uneasy. One night, lying in bed, he heard a sound, a quiet chuckle. His heart clenched. He opened his eyes and saw that the closet door was ajar again. Max got up, turned on the light. Nothing. Only darkness inside. He closed the closet tightly and lay back down, convincing himself that it was imagination. But when he looked again, the door was ajar again, and there was a red clown nose lying on the floor. The next night, there was a knock. It was as if someone was drumming softly on the closet door. Max plucked up his courage, opened it sharply, and saw emptiness. But on the wall of the closet appeared children's drawings. They were crude, drawn in something red. There was a little man with a big smile on them. The knock came again, not from the closet. Now it was right behind him. John couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard breathing nearby. And then someone whispered, "You can see me, so I'm your friend now." The next morning, he wasn't in the apartment. The door was locked from the inside, and there was only one object on the bed, an old clown wig. Karina got a job as an animator at a children's center. The job was simple: put on a clown costume, make jokes, and hand out balloons. The kids adored her, but one day, one of the kids said a strange thing to her. "You're better at leading than Jimmy." She smiled. "Who's Jimmy?" The children know the truth. The children looked at each other. "This is the clown who was here before. We didn't call him, but he used to come. He said he was with us forever now." Karina laughed, thinking it was just a child's fantasy. But soon, she saw an old photograph. It showed a man in a clown costume. His face looked strange. His smile was too wide. "He's around." The next day, leaving the center, Karina noticed something creepy. There were the marks of children's palms on the glass, and one big hand. In the night, she was awakened by a phone call. Someone whispered hoarsely in the receiver, "You've taken my place. I hope you like to have fun." Reflection lies. From then on, she began to hear strange noises. Some nights there was laughter, but the scariest thing happened in the bathroom. She was looking in the mirror while washing her face, and for a second, she saw her reflection. It was smiling, wider than it should have been, too wide, and then it blinked, out of sync with her.
In their city stood an old abandoned circus. The building was a faded tile, peeling walls, broken windows, and web, as if nature itself turned away from this place. It was said that many years ago, one of the artists, a clown named Basso, disappeared right during the performance. He disappeared in front of the audience, leaving no trace. The performance was interrupted, and no one else saw either Basso or other people from his team. They quickly forgot about the circus, and he himself became a reminder of something terrible. But adolescents adored such places. They always searched for adventures in the worst corners of the city. Jake, his friends Mike and Emma, decided that right now they would be able to find out what really happened. They heard that this circus was closed after the clown disappeared, but no one dared to look inside. "Come on, what should we be afraid of?" said Jake, holding a ticket in his hands, which he found at the entrance, as if someone specially left him for them. In the dark, the circus was quiet. Only the weak light from their flashlights illuminated the floor covered with dust, and the old seats, which have long been deprived of its functions. For a moment it seems that the place was abandoned recently, but as soon as they crossed the threshold, the light blinked and then went out. "What kind of?" Mike whispered, feeling something bad in the air. Suddenly there was a strange sound, as if someone had inflated the balloon. The sound was muffled but sharp, and cut the silence like a knife. Emma cried out, and they all froze in place. Jake, deciding that this was just a stupid sound, looked around again. "Probably some old mechanism," he said, not quite confident. "Let's go further." They moved along the corridors of the circus, but the further, the darker and worse. Suddenly, the door in the arena creaked, and they saw the silhouette of a figure standing in the center. It was a blurry figure, more reminiscent of a shadow than something living. She had a strange pose, as if she was waiting for them. "It's not funny, Jake," shouted Mike, ready to turn around and run away. But Jake, gritting his teeth, took a step forward. The figure approached them without making a sound. She was unclear, like a fog, but something in her circuit was wrong. It was the figure of a clown, with a huge, wide smile and eyes that did not move. Grim was old and his face unnaturally elongated. Her hands were too long and the suit was torn. "I was waiting for you," said the figure in a voice that sounded like a whisper, penetrating the very depths of their mind. Jake shuddered and took a step back, but his friends remained standing. It was like in a nightmare when you cannot move. The clown slowly held out his hand and offered Jake a second ticket. Jake hesitated, not knowing what to do. "Don't take him, Jake," shouted Emma. "This is a trap." But Jake, as if in a trance, reached for a ticket. At that moment, the light went out, and they were in complete darkness. When the light turned on, the circus turned out to be empty. The figure disappeared, and they found themselves in a dark, empty arena. But it was strange that Jake was holding a ticket in his hands. He was old and yellow, with the inscription, "Welcome Forever." And in the very center of the ticket, there was an inscription written in red, "You are now one of us." Friends looked around, trying to understand what happened. The background looked like a scene from a nightmare. Circus seats were empty, and only fabrics and old accessories lay in the arena. The darkness enveloped everything. Suddenly, there was a voice that echoed in their heads. "You knew that it would be the end." "Greetings, Jake." Friends began to panic. They ran to the exit in horror, but as soon as they approached the door, she closed with a loud sound. The hall became even darker. Jake clenched, feeling how he was losing control of the situation. He could not explain what was happening, but he felt that this place would now not let him go. "We cannot get out of here," Emma whispered, grabbing his hand. "We became part of this circus. We are now part of it." And at that moment they realized the circus was alive, and his dark essence would never leave them alone. Jake, without any hope of salvation,